Hey guys, welcome back to another video on my channel. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe, like, comment down all your suggestions in the section below, and check out all my other content once you're done with this video. And we are 40 days away from election day, and in today's video, we are going to be updating my 2024 election map. Quite a lot has happened this past week. We've had some pretty good events, some pretty good numbers for Donald Trump. We have a lot of early numbers coming in and some early voting, and I will make a video separately for that, especially on the state of Virginia. It's something important that I do want us to look over, but we do need a separate video. And in today's video, we're just going to be filling out this map, this 2024 map. This is going to be very detailed, very specific. And I want to go over the national vote first. And right now, we have Kamala Harris up by 2 percentage points. That's according to the past polls since 9/11 to 9/13. So those are the polls that are in the average. There's a lot of polls being released every single day, so it fluctuates back and forth. But she has kind of stabilized around between 1 and 2 over the past month. And realistically, I do think that right now the popular vote is going to be really even. I do think they're overestimating her by a little bit because we have some polls in here that are complete outliers. For example, Reuters and Ipsos, very much an outlier. She's not going to win by 6. Morning Consult, known for their polls that are very, very Democrat skewed, her having her up by 5. And then we have some other polls that are tied, or we have Harris up by 2. And Trump does lead by 2. We have Rasmussen reports where Trump is up by 2. And we have Atlas Intel, which is probably the most accurate pollster, having him up by 3. So very interesting. And Harris being only up by 2, between 1 to 2 realistically, only puts her at a 37% chance to win the election. So that's also something interesting to see here according to this model right here. And I've definitely showed this in many of my videos because of how fascinating it is. Democrats need to win the popular vote by between 2 and 3 at least to have a majority chance of winning the election. And then also on Polymarket right now, it is an even race, almost a 50-50 chance of winning the election. And right now these swing states are very, very even. We have Arizona and Georgia favoring Trump. We have North Carolina favoring Trump. And we have the states of Nevada and Pennsylvania basically being a 50-50 odds. Michigan and Wisconsin still favor Harris. Now, with all that in mind, let's fill out our map and begin with these safe states. Beginning with Kamala Harris, we're going to begin on the west and make our safe states of Washington, Oregon, California, and Hawaii. All of these states are going to be 12 points and above. And before we continue, let's just go over my margins. We have the safe column, which is over here, and that's going to be 12 points and over for that respective candidate. We have the likely column, and that's going to be between 6 and 12 points. We have the lean column, and that's going to be between 2 and 6. And then we have the tilt column. So that's going to be under 2 points. So all these states I'm filling out right now are going to be safe, not really contested at all. Kamala Harris will also win the state of Illinois by a safe margin. And then all these states up on the East Coast are going to be safe for her up on the Northeast. We have Vermont. Maine's 1st district is going to be safe. Nebraska and Maine are the only 2 states that do split up their electoral votes by congressional district. The state of New York, although I do think is going to be a lot closer. Last time around, Joe Biden won it by around 23. I think this margin could possibly even be cut in half, but right now I do have the vice president winning the state by around 14 to 15 points. New Jersey is not going to be in that column. It will drop into the likely column. We'll go over that next. The states for Donald Trump that are going to be in the safe column include Alaska, Utah, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, North and South Dakota, all of Nebraska except the 2nd district, Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, Iowa, and Ohio. And that'll be it. That'll be all of Trump's safe states. These are the states that are going to go to him by 12 points and over. Iowa and Ohio will be joining that safe column from last time around. He won Iowa and Ohio by 8 points in 2016 and in 2020. Those 2 states are trending to the right, and I do expect him to break that hump and be able to win those 2 by over 12 percentage points this time around. And with the safe states out of the way, we have Harris at 167, Trump at 148. Let's get into the likely states now. For Kamala Harris, she'll win the state of Colorado, probably the most left-trending state. It voted by Hillary by only around 5, and then voted to Biden by 13.5. As you can see, very heavy trends to the left. I expect this to continue, as in compared to the nation. I do think it'll be a little bit more Republican, but that's because the whole nation as a whole is shifting Republican. but it'll still stay, I believe, in that double-digit margin, voting between 10 to 12 points for Kamala Harris. The state of New Mexico will be staying in that likely column because we haven't had too much data to show Trump making it really competitive. Right now, I do have the state being 6 to 8 points for Kamala Harris. A recent poll just came out that has Harris up 8 in the state, so that's good news for her, but not as good as Joe Biden since he did win the state by 11 points back in 2020. The state of New Jersey is going to be the final state in her likely column. Once again, New Jersey is a state that is going to be falling from safe to likely. And for Donald Trump, he will have 2 states that will be going into the likely column. The states of Texas and Florida will be going from lean to likely. And that is because these 2 states are going to be very favorable for him this time around. We have Florida, which is subject to probably the most pro-Republican shifts over the past few years. In 2020, Donald Trump, despite losing in most states, actually gained in the state of Florida, especially down in the southeastern part of the state and around the Orlando area. He gained in Miami-Dade by 22 points, almost flipping the county. And then in 2022, Governor Ron DeSantis and Senator Marco Rubio won the states by 19 and 16 points respectively. So the state of Florida will be shifting right, as well as the state of Texas. This time around, I do not see Democrats gaining more in the Dallas-Fort Worth suburbs, as well as around Austin and San Antonio. Houston as a whole will trend to the right as well. And I do believe this mainly because of Hispanic trends, and not only because Kamala Harris is not going to drive that turnout like Joe Biden, but because the Hispanic trends, especially around the Rio Grande, did save Republicans from losing too much support in this state. And I do think it is a state that will stay in the Republican column. Both these states in the polling have Donald Trump up by around 6. And then we have Maine's 2nd district. He won it last time by around 7 points. And this time around, he is going to win it by a little more, but not quite to be in that safe column. Now we're going to move into the lean column. And these are states that are going to be more competitive and states that both campaigns are going to campaign in to an extent. And first, we're going to begin with Kamala Harris's lean states. The state of Minnesota will be the first state going into the lean column. The polls in Minnesota do have her up by around 5 points. And right now, it is looking like she is going to underperform Biden's margin despite her running mate being from Minnesota. I do think Minnesota is going to trend to the left in general, but it is going to move to the right because the whole country is moving to the right. We saw some really good shifts for Democrats in the Minneapolis area, which is a big reason why I do not think Minnesota will flip this time around. However, it will be a lot closer. The state of Virginia, probably the most surprising state on this map because it is a state that Joe Biden won by 10. He doubled on Hillary Clinton's margins. And as we can see here from these very, very good trends in most of the state, this state was looking like it would never come back. Only a year later did Glenn Youngkin win and become the governor. And now the polls and the early numbers in the state of Virginia are looking very, very good for Republicans. I do expect them to contest it to an extent. And I do expect the state right now to fall in that 4 to 6 point margin for the Democrats. Nebraska's 2nd district is going to vote for Democrats, a district that Joe Biden won by 6, and a left trending one to say the least. Not much data out of there, but the only poll that did come out has her leading by a pretty good amount. And then we have these states of New Hampshire and Maine at large also going to fall in that lean column for her. And these are 2 states that Joe Biden also won by a lot larger margins. He won New Hampshire by 7. He won Maine by 9. But I expect these to shift to the right, not by too much, but they are very, very elastic states. And these states go back and forth. They do elect Republican governors and senators. So these 2 states are going to shift relative to the country. And I do expect the states of Minnesota, Virginia, New Hampshire, and Maine to stay relatively together in terms of their margins. They are pretty similar in the ways they vote. So that's going to be those states. And with those, we have the final 7 states. These are the 7 states that are going to be the most competitive. Harris is at 226 and Trump is at 219. We're not finished though with Trump's lean states. The state of North Carolina will be going into the lean column for him. I expect him to win the state of North Carolina by around 2 to 3 at the end of the day. Right now, he leads the polls by around 0.7. And we do have some good numbers for him out of the state of North Carolina. We do have couple polls that have Harris up, Quinnipiac being a big outlier, Bloomberg as well. And we have some pretty good polls right around the middle here that are a lot more reliable, that do have the race in Trump's column. And then we do have Marist, which is a very liberal poll, but they just came out with a new poll that has the race as tied. So very surprising. Trump leads by 0.7. I do think he's going to end up winning the state. And I do think the northeastern and the southeastern parts are going to shift in his favor, while Kamala Harris will not gain too much in these suburbs. Since Donald Trump won the state by around 1.5 in 2020, I do expect her to not be able to win the state, since the country as a whole is going to be trending right compared to 2020, and this state does vote to the right of the country. Another state that I am putting now in that lean column for Donald Trump is the state of Arizona, and Arizona is a state that we've been seeing very, very good polls for Donald Trump. He leads by 1.4% on average, and Arizona and North Carolina are one of the two states that right now have very, very accurate polling compared to the Rust Belt. The Rust Belt has very bad polling. Meanwhile, the Sun Belt's polling is a lot more accurate. And that's displayed here. We see only one poll, once again, that Bloomberg poll, having Harris even up. Trump leads in the average by 1.4. So that's something to keep in mind. And this is a state that has been impacted a lot by that border issue, and due to that factor, and due to the fact that Joe Biden only won the state by 12,000 votes, I think it is going to be tipped in his favor, just narrowly into that lean column. And now we're going to move on to the tilt column, and these are the states that are going to be 2 points or less, so the most competitive states. And I want to go over the state of Georgia first, because I think Georgia could even fall into that lean column, given these numbers are very, very good for Trump. Once again, he's only down in one poll. He's up by 1.5%. And keep in mind, Georgia is the state with the most accurate polls. And this also a state that Polymarket does predict Trump has a 60% chance to win, very similar to Arizona, and actually more than the state of North Carolina. And I do think Trump is going to win the state of Georgia in 2020. It had very good numbers for Joe Biden because of those heavy African-American turnout in those suburbs. And during a COVID year, turnout will not happen again. And in a state where he only won by 12,000 votes, I think right now Kamala Harris does have that edge. Also, another state following into that tilt column, but one I am more sure of than the rest, is going to be the state of Pennsylvania. And I do think the state of Pennsylvania is going to be the state that gives Trump the election. And Pennsylvania is a state that Joe Biden had a special connection with. He is from Lackawanna County, where Scranton is. He shifted the eastern part of the state by around 5 points in all the counties, and he was able to win the state by around 1 point. Kamala Harris does not have that in the state. She does not have that impact. The polls are very tight as well. We have most of them being a tie. We have two of them being Trump plus 1 and 2. We have two polls towards the end here that have Harris up. But once again, another outlier. That same Bloomberg poll is going to keep coming up. That does skew the average in Democrats' favor a lot, but is highly inaccurate. Same thing with Quinnipiac over here. And this is one of the states that overestimates Democrats by a lot, so keep that in mind. However, I do still think he is going to win the state by that tilt margin. Now, we kind of narrowed it down to the final three states, and these are the three states that are probably going to be the hardest to call, especially the state of Michigan. Right now, I'm going to place the state of Wisconsin in Trump's column as well, in that tilt column. I do think this state, being only voting for Joe Biden by 20,000 votes, and we have a very favorable environment for him, a very favorable state for him. This is a very white working class state. Another state that Joe Biden had an impact, especially in this area. Kamala Harris, being from the state of California, does not reach out to these states as well. We had also a Teamsters decline to endorse Kamala Harris, and many of their supporters have switched from Democrat to Republican in who they're going to vote for. So that's very impactful. And in a state where a lot of voters are these, white working class voters, the same thing with Pennsylvania, and people seem to forget how these states' electorates are and what the people are. And I do think one of these states that is going to underestimate Trump again is the state of Wisconsin. And she should actually be worried that she's only up by 0.9, because back in 2020, Joe Biden was up by 6.5. and Clinton was up by 4.7. And this is a state that people cannot poll for their lives. It seems like the Hill Emerson knows much better than these other polls, but most pollsters do not know how to poll this state of Wisconsin. Just look at how badly this was. Reuters Ipsos +10, New York Times Siena +11, and it just goes on from there. And the state, I think, as a whole is going to trend right, and it is going to vote for Donald Trump, as well as the state of Michigan. This is a flip. I previously had this being at a Democrat state, and this is also a state that Kamala Harris does lead by 2. She leads most polls, except we have 3 over here where it's either a tie or Trump up by 1. But the polls that do come from inside the state have it as a tie. This is a very good pollster from inside the state. If we go to the multi-candidate, we see here once again, this is also a poll from inside the state. We have Detroit News, another poll from inside the state. Epic MRI, another poll from inside the state. It is a very different ball game when you look at pollsters that are from the state of Michigan versus the other pollsters that are not from the state of Michigan. And these are all the mainstream polls. And I do think the polls, as well as in 2020 and 2016, overestimating Democrats once again. This is a state that it's going to be hard for Donald Trump to flip, but also easy at the same time because of the favorable trends for him. And this is a state that I do see as 50-50. I could see Kamala Harris winning the state. This is probably the state that I have the least confidence in projecting, but I am giving it to the former president, as well as the state of Nevada. I do think he'll also win Nevada by the slightest of margins, and the margins right now in the polls are very, very close. She does lead by 1.4. Once again, thrown off by this Bloomberg poll, has her up by 7. That is a complete outlier, so you can just throw that out in the garbage. That is not going to happen. And that is a theme with a lot of these polls. They just throw in these pollsters that do not know how to poll, that have very bad overestimations. In 2020, Biden was supposed to win by 5.3. So that's just an example of that. And I do think the state as a whole will be flipping to Republicans. We have some very good numbers, data, early numbers coming out of the state of Nevada. We have good voter registration numbers coming out of the state of Nevada. And all Donald Trump really needs to do is gain in Clark County to really, really flip the state. But either way, this is the map I have right now. I have it at 312 for Donald Trump, 226 for Kamala Harris. And keep in mind, this is still not my final map. I still will create 2 more maps before the election day itself. And there's a lot of stuff that could still happen within these 40 days. But right now, this is my map. And I appreciate you guys watching this video. Please subscribe, like my content, put all your suggestions in the section below. And I'll check you guys out in the next one.